In this go-for-a-punch world in which we live, where we spend our days with SpongeBob SquarePants and our nights strolling London after midnight, you may think you've heard of everything we've yet to find. But there is more unknown in this world than you could possibly imagine. This is lesser-known lost media.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It is I, your host, Mr. Sean, here with Volume 14 of Lesser Known Lost Media. In this series, we won't be talking about Sailor Mouth or Grizzly Man or any of the lost media that all the other YouTube channels and their moms are talking about. No, in this one, we're going to be talking about pieces of lost media that don't get mentioned all that much. Sure, they might not be as glamorous or heavily sought after as Saki Sanabashi or the original Smile Dog or Jeff the Killer photos, but they are lost, and that means there's something to be found. And who knows, maybe you have this piece of lost media and just didn't know people were looking for it. Now, I'm no investigative reporter. I don't typically go out searching for these pieces of lost media. I am a mini maker, and when I make and paint my minis, I like to listen to YouTube, and one of my favorites is lost media. But I kept listening, and all these different channels we're all talking about the same thing. And you know, if you want something done a specific way, my advice is always to do it yourself. So rather than just wait for them to come up with other things to talk about, I decided to make a show for people like me who are tired of hearing all the same things all the time. There is no real order to this, but if you're new to the series, that's fine. You can watch this one, you can go back and then watch the other ones. What we do is we have our first 4 pieces of safe for work lost media, followed by a brief ad break where I talk about my miniatures, and then we do a not safe for work piece to end it all up. That's the rundown of the show. If you have listened before, there's nothing new in that I need to tell you, and if you're new, welcome to the show. Let's get into it. At number 1, we have Catapult to Krusty Land, a lost promotional online game for the Universal Studios Motion Simulator ride in 2008. Now, if you aren't aware, there used to be a motion simulator ride at Universal Studios for Back to the Future, which is one of my favorite movies, and then they got rid of it. And normally this would piss me off, except that it was replaced with a Simpsons ride, which is one of the few things I love more than Back to the Future. It used the same system that Back to the Future ride had used, but had the Simpsons venturing through a Krusty Land theme park while Sideshow Bob tries to kill them. The ride is amazing and is perfect. The Simpsons Land is one of my absolute favorite parts of the Universal Studios park. But when both Universal Studios Orlando and Hollywood got to work on this attraction, they made an online promotional game to promote it at least 2 months before it actually opened. Now, this was a Flash game, though it did disappear long before the end of Adobe Flash. So the ride was first announced in 2007, and construction on both versions commenced as the year led on. Though on March 28, 2008, an official website was made to promote the ride. It was designed by 65 Media, who had previously worked on the website for The Simpsons movie, with much of the site design, layout, and flash animation done by Priscilla Gomez. The main menu resembled the golden archway entrance to either Universal Studio Parks with the iconic rotating globe in the left foreground and Krusty Land in the back. Hidden by a tarp during construction, was counted down by a magic 8-ball for both versions, and this was fully unveiled upon the opening. The site featured a bunch of Simpsons characters, even including ones voiced by Harry Shearer, who was the one Simpsons cast member who didn't do any voices for the ride due to scheduling conflicts. Now, the main focal point of this website was a minigame titled Catapult to Krusty Land that worked like most online slingshot games, where a wooden catapult stands on a green hill that, if fired with the right timing and wind direction, will send them beyond the gates of Universal Studios theme parks. However, there would also be hazards in the way, including a swinging wrecking ball that can throw your character off guard when thrown at the wrong time. Now, you weren't shooting Simpsons characters at this. You actually would design your own avatar, your own Simpsons avatar, that you would make yourself with a login account, and was a repurposed feature from the Simpsons movie website. Again, being made by the same company, it was easy for them to reuse this. You could also throw notable caricatures of characters such as like Conan O'Brien, Jay Leno, John McCain, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, And they weren't given their real names. They're like Senator Pantsuit or Senator Whitehair or Senator Talkgood. Now the other point of this game was a contest. So whoever got the ultimate high score would be the winner, receiving the Simpsons sweepstakes, including a grand prize trip for 4 to either Orlando or Hollywood, plus their OCs being on display at both locations, though it is not known who the winners were or if their creations ever made it into the parts of the ride. There were also other games called The Screamatorium of Dr. Frightmarestein, which is a reference to the Season 9 episode Bart Carney, and then Madame Manjula's Future Looker After. While no actual gameplay footage of these exist, from the context clues of the title screens, we can deduce that the Screamatorium was a target shooting game, and that the Madame Manjulia, I don't know why I have so much trouble with that name, was a kind of like a memory card matching game. Now, the Simpsons Ride website and its online games would remain active a year after the attraction first opened, though in 2010, Universal decided to retire the site permanently, as the link would now be redirected to the error page of the Universal Studios Orlando website. ROMs for the Catapult and Carnival games were never copied onto any other website, and with no gameplay footage being available, only select screenshots and articles remain as proof of their existence. Any capture of the Simpsons Ride website from 2008 to 2009 only shows a blank white page with text disclaiming the ride's plot summary and potential release date, as the ride was made using Adobe Flash 9 and JavaScript, which was incompatible with the Wayback Machine even before the software was terminated in 2020. So while the Simpsons Ride may have gone on to become an enduring hit for both Universal Studio resorts in Florida and California, the website that promoted it is unfortunately forever lost. This one really interested me because, like I said, I love The Simpsons, and not only did I not know that this was lost until coming across this article, I didn't even know this existed. Because if I had, I would have been on this thing trying to win that sweepstakes. Come on. But yeah, so if you by chance happen to have a ROM of the old Simpsons Ride at Universal Studios website games, you should definitely upload that. People are looking for it. At number 2, we have Pokemon Stars, which is an unconfirmed, enhanced version of the Sun and Moon Nintendo 3DS role-playing games, but would have been a port to the Nintendo Switch. So, Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon were released on November 18th of 2016 and were released onto the Nintendo 3DS as the first installments in the 7th generation of the Pokemon series. And honestly, if you ask me, despite the Hawaiian theme, which I am all about, they are the worst official regular style Pokemon games. Now, a month prior to the game's release, Nintendo officially revealed the Nintendo Switch, a hybrid console that is able to be used as either a home console or a portable console. So, of course, the question was going to be, will there be a mainline Pokemon game on this? But no plans were announced at that time. Now, around the time of release of Sun and Moon, Eurogamer reported that they had heard from multiple sources that a game under the codename of Pokemon Stars was currently under development with a projected release date of late 2017. Now, people assumed this meant there would be like a third standalone game, much like Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Crystal, Pokemon Emerald, but that this time it would be released on a different console. Enhancements of Pokemon Stars supposedly would have included new Pokemon, along with a higher resolution for the game, being played at 720p. Rumors started circulating that a mainline Pokemon game would be released on a home console, whereas all previous entries in the main series were exclusive to handheld systems. Over the next few months, the Pokemon Company would start a campaign called Look at the Stars with the release of star-themed merchandise. Shortly thereafter, series director Junichi Masuda posted a tweet containing the word Pokemon Stars, which some interpreted as a potential teaser for the game. Even more speculation arose when an Amazon UK listing for a game called Pokemon Stars was uploaded in mid-2017, with pre-orders being sold. The listing didn't feature any cover art, and the release date was listed as January of 2030, suggesting it may have been a fraudulent listing. Yeah, no shit. But on June 6th of 2017, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Pokemon Ultra Moon were announced as enhanced versions of Sun and Moon for the 3DS. On the Pokemon Company's official website, they were listed as releasing on both the Nintendo 3DS and the Switch, but the Switch listing was quickly removed, suggesting it was likely to have been a mistake. It was suspected that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon could be the Pokemon Stars project due to the similarity in the rumors. But yeah, ultimately we never got Pokemon Stars. The first Pokemon Switch games would turn out to be Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which I don't consider those mainline games. Those are weird Pokemon Go hybrids of the first generation remake. But Eurogamer writer Tom Phillips, who wrote the previous articles about Pokemon Stars coming to the Switch, stated that in regards to Pokemon Stars, that thanks to him, along with the folks over at Did You Know Gaming with their video Lost Nintendo Games, some more information could be gleaned about what potentially happened to this supposed game. These sources indicated that the game's cancellation was due to Nintendo's business strategy. After the Wii U's failure, Nintendo originally planned to release 3 games belonging to their biggest IPs: The Legend of Zelda with Breath of the Wild, Mario with Super Mario Odyssey, and Pokemon with Project Pokemon Stars. It was meant to be a backup plan in case the Switch was struggling in the market. But the plans had changed not only because the Switch was successful, but they were struggling to produce enough of them. So it seems that they had other 3DS games planned to be ported to the Switch, such as Metroid Samus Returns, as backup plans. Now, Nintendo has stated that the Switch and 3DS will coexist with each other, but just like the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS, the Switch would phase out the 3DS, which we've seen happen since. And Eurogamer also suggested that a reason for cancellation is that trying to sell an up-res 3DS game for full price could have damaged the Switch's reputation during that first year, so it was ultimately decided not to do it. Though there are also plenty of people that said Eurogamer just made up all of those ideas. So ultimately, while there is a lot of supposed information about the game's existence, there's really no definitive information or evidence as to whether it really existed. There are no prototypes, no screenshots, and honestly, it's just speculation, which, if you want my opinion on it, I think ultimately, yes, they probably had planned a standalone game, but then for some reason, just like they did, they've re-released 2 games at a time, though, is my understanding. Those have typically been like remakes, so I don't know why they would release Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon instead of just doing one game, but I think it probably started as one game and then became 2, and that's why it's not Pokemon Stars. And as to whether or not it was ever expected to be on the Switch, beats me. At number 3, we have Birth Control, which is a lost band family planning documentary film circa 1917. So, Birth Control, which is also known as The New World, is a 1917 American semi-autobiographical documentary film produced by and starring Margaret Sanger. It documented Sanger's career as a nurse and her controversial involvement in the early era of family planning in the United States, presented in private showings between the 10th of April to the 6th of May in 1917. It was later banned in America before it could be publicly distributed. So, the origin of this film is kind of from tragic circumstances. Sanger was born in a family consisting of 11 children, where her mother had also suffered 7 miscarriages, and at age 19 she saw her mother pass away from tuberculosis. Margaret would resent her father for contributing to the 18 pregnancies, god damn, which she felt played a part in her mother's death. She also began studying nursing at the White Plains Hospital and the Manhattan Eye and Ear Clinic, eventually becoming a nurse at the Lower East Side of New York. Sanger would primarily visit working-class immigrant women who generally lacked knowledge and education regarding contraception. This resulted in many, especially in those suffering from poverty, experiencing unwanted pregnancies. Back then, not only was abortion illegal in America, so too was accessing contraceptive information as per an 1873 legislative act called the Comstock Act of 1873. Which deemed the practice obscene. So according to Sanger, several women she worked with had experienced multiple childbirths and miscarriages, with some also attempting illegal self-induced and back alley abortions to avoid repeating fates. One story she frequently retold was meeting Sadie Sachs, a woman who had urgently requested contraceptive information from a doctor after carrying out a self-induced abortion. The male doctor laughed and told her only abstinence from sex with her husband could prevent pregnancy. Abstinence was ultimately not an option, and Sachs passed away following a botched self-induced abortion she underwent before Sanger could meet her again. Whether Sachs actually existed or was simply based on Sanger's experiences has been the subject of debate. I do, just commenting here in the middle, I think it's funny that a doctor would recommend abstinence from sex with a husband when I believe all the way back in 1873, a woman didn't have a legal right in America to deny her husband sex. Don't quote me on this, but I believe it was the 1960s before a man could even be considered to, by the legal system, to have raped his wife. It was for the longest time, it was, hey, if you're married and he wants sex, you don't have a right to tell him no. But back to the story. Following these deaths and other harrowing experiences she witnessed, Sanger wanted to battle America's strict anti-contraceptive legislation, which of course were reinforced by anti-obscenity laws. America is not as free a land for freedom of speech as we've been led to believe, guys. I'm just telling you that right now. This is sounding drastically similar to the state of things now. Things are not quite this bad, but they're not much better, honestly. So she produced things like a monthly newsletter called The Woman Rebel, a publication which focused on women's rights, coining the term birth control and deeming it as critical free speech issue in the country. She also went on to establish the United States' first birth control clinic in October of 1916. This was located in Brownsville, Brooklyn, and the clinic lasted just 10 days before it was forcibly shut down, and Sanger and her sister were quickly arrested for distributing contraceptives and maintaining a public nuisance. This did not deter Sanger, however, and she continued campaigning, including founding the American Birth Control League, which since 1942 is known as the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. She was also influential in the success of the pill, deemed a critical invention for achieving safe and effective contraception. And a year before her death in 1966, the Comstock Act of 1873 was altered after the Griswold v. Connecticut case saw private contraceptive use to be declared a constitutional right. Sanger is known to be one of the pioneering figures of birth control and family planning across the United States, and her legacy is not extended towards abortion rights though, as Sanger believed the practice should only be used in emergencies and that contraception is the most practical solution to avoiding unwanted pregnancies. Again, I agree completely. I do believe that people should have the right to abortions, but I believe there are several things you can do before you get to that point. Just like we try to attempt to control the pet population, control the unwanted children population. Have yourself spayed or neutered, people. But now that you know about the background of Sanger, let's talk about her documentary, Birth Control. So, before serving 30 days in jail in 1917 for operating an illegal birth control clinic, Sanger decided to further her cause by producing a film, having been interested in art and fiction during her life. Written by Sanger and the Birth Control Review founder Frederick A. Blossom, Birth Control was part documentary and part narrative, with Sanger starring in a dramatized, semi-biographical account of her career within family planning. She collaborated with the B.S. Moss Motion Picture Corporation to distribute the film, Moss himself sharing liberal values for the 1910s. Again, yeah, that's right, people. This was like turn of the century. The film is split into 5 reels. The first primarily consisted of Sanger being interviewed, with her discussing and defending her actions in fighting for birth control, stating that the Brownsville Clinic served impoverished women instead of those enjoying good health and financial status. Scenes incorporated during the interview featured large families consisting of weak and crippled children of exhausted, poverty-stricken mothers living within poor slum conditions. Among the poor mothers featured included Helen Field, who would be based on Sachs. The film also showcased better-off, smaller families, with the work pushing the narrative that this is the family unit to obtain. Birth Control also focused on Sanger's nursing career and her difficulties in resisting the urge to inform her clients about contraception, lest she violate the Comstock Law. However, following Field's suffering and death, Sanger opts out of nursing and began her campaign for legal adequate dissemination of birth control. Following this, Sanger opens a birth control clinic in Brooklyn, providing critical contraceptive information to her main clientele, impoverished women. The clinic proves a major success, and the facility is crowded by women. Sanger is eventually arrested for this, and the clinic is shut down. However, the film concludes with Sanger campaigning onwards and expressing hope for the future of birth control. The film contained propaganda elements, New York State Supreme Court Judge Nathan Bidger stating that by presenting the client as filled with poor women seeking education on contraception, it implied that rich folk are actually breaking the law by accumulating contraceptive information and solutions that poor people cannot. Whether it contained Sanger's views on race and eugenics remains unclear. I neglected to mention this, but Sanger, by contemporary standards, did not have a great view on race and eugenics. But again, we're talking about the 1910s, so the fact that she was campaigning for anything even remotely liberal is pretty impressive. But yes, she did have some negative views, but so did everybody, I guess. I'm not defending her, but sometimes her work does get muddied by the fact that she was not perfect. She was a human full of flaws. So, despite her jail time delaying filming, it was eventually completed by April of 1917, and it received promotions in publications such as the 21st April 1917 issue of Motion Picture News. The film's target audience was clear, with the slogan, "Every woman in the world will demand to see it," placed in one advertisement. Another advertisement placed in Sanger's The Birth Control Review exclaimed it was an honest birth control film at last. To avoid concerning exhibitors that later copycat films would be produced, Sanger declared that her starring role in the film would be an exclusive. She also promised to redistribute some of the profits to further the birth control campaign. Seeing as the term birth control was controversial throughout much of America, the film was also set to be showcased under the title The New World, the chosen title depending on the audience and the exhibitor. Okay, that's actually pretty smart. So, private showings to journalists and activists were shown starting in the 21st of April of 1917, and the final one being showcased on the 6th of May in 1917. It was supposed to have its first public showcase at the Park Theater in Manhattan, but unbeknownst to the people who were planning on seeing it, it had already been banned by the city's license commissioner. This was done because the commissioner claimed that numerous citizens had complained about it, and after a vote was conducted by the Brooklyn branch of the Motion Picture Exhibitors League, unanimous disapproval of the film was noted, supporting its banning. So the situation was summarized that stating a film on birth control should not be classified as theatrical entertainment. Of course, there were appeals launched against the ban, which went all the way to the Appellate Division of the New York Supreme Court. However, the ban was ultimately upheld as per the 1915 Mutual Film Corporation v. Industrial Commission of Ohio, which prevented films from being protected through the First Amendment, as the works were considered business instead of art. I don't know if I like that definition, but I can see where they're coming from. Also, under the Court of Ordinances of the City of New York, productions could be censored or banned in the interest of morality, decency, and public safety and welfare. Birth Control made dubious history by becoming the first film produced by a woman to be subsequently banned in the United States. As to the availability of this film, by the time the Mutual Film Corporation v. Industrial Commission of Ohio ruling was thrown out in 1952, and thus making the film legal again, the film Birth Control was declared missing. It is believed that all copies of the film were destroyed, with no footage having resurfaced despite several extensive searches conducted over the years. Nevertheless, a few stills remain viewable, including a part of the Sophia Smith collection and in the Birth Control Review advertisement. Personally, I think this would be a very interesting film to kind of see what for the time, I guess, liberal viewing on the concept of birth control and contraception would have been in the early 1900s. Again, it is unknown if Sanger's views, she was a racist and she was an ableist, and it's not known if either of those two views are portrayed in the film, but again, not looking at that part of her flaws, looking at the fact that this was someone who was championing women's rights to control their bodies, to control their futures, in a time where women weren't even allowed to deny their husband's sex, let alone take precautions to prevent them from siring unwanted children. I definitely think this could be really cool to see, but, that remains to be seen. I definitely don't... I just think this would have been cool. At number 4, we have Fastlane, the lost, unaltered version of the Spider-Man anti-cannabis comic circa 1999 to 2000. So from 1999 to 2000, Marvel Comics teamed up with the White House's Office of National Drug Control Policy, the ONDCP, to publish a series of anti-cannabis comics centering around Spider-Man, titled Fastlane. This comic is infamous for randomly interrupting almost every Marvel comic of this time period. The book was not overseen by Marvel editorial and was subject to mandates of the ONDCP, leading to numerous parts of the book being altered at their request. Just a side note, I find this very interesting because the reason Marvel, unlike DC, threw out the Comics Code of Authority as their, guide to what they could put on, was as early as they did, while DC kept going with them for much longer, is because there was a Spider-Man comic that actually featured heavily into the theme of drugs. Now, it did have an anti-drug message, but you couldn't mention drugs at all and have the Comics Code of Authority give you their seal of approval. So it is interesting to me that Marvel would be the one selected for this drug campaign. Not unlikely per se, just interesting. So, the story introduces the movie star Zane Wellen, who promotes marijuana use and is idolized by Daily Bugle intern Sam Exmoor. Zane's new action movie, Fastlane, promises the best special effects of all time, which offends Spider-Man baddie Mysterio, as only he has the best special effects. So it's up to the web-slinger to protect Zane from Mysterio's attack. While over-exaggerating the effects of marijuana in the story, Sam eventually finds out that Zane doesn't actually smoke weed and learns about the dangers of the drug. So, as to the instances of censorship, which we don't have the uncensored versions, these are all based on changes requested by the ONDCP. Some of these include that a girl that hangs around Zane Wellen throughout the story was changed to look more run down and sickly to push her more towards the heroin chick look. I don't know if that's meant to be heroin chic or heroin chick. Both probably would work just fine. Word bubble was moved to cover J. Jonah Jameson's raised fist, with another one being removed entirely in a different panel due to it being perceived as too violent. Alright, I think that's hilarious. Daily Bugle intern Tony Harris originally had their hair straightened and pulled back in a ponytail, unlike their pigtail puffs in the final book. Not sure why that was done. Any panel that originally depicted Jonah with a cigar in his mouth had it removed and replaced with spit particles. And apparently there was a scene where a truck driver's dialogue was changed because the ONDCP said the original dialogue stereotyped truck drivers. Now, as to the availability of the uncensored work, while Marvel has released Fastlane as a part of Spider-Man Fight Substance Abuse, it uses scans of the story taken from the printed comic books instead of the originals, which means Marvel likely lacks the finished pages, much less earlier ones. Some of the unedited pencil sketches were included in a Comics Alliance article about the storyline, but they seem to have gone unarchived. Of course, this is just a case of government bureaucracy kind of ruining a work of art. I mean, I definitely think this is definitely from a weird time when the government had a huge hate boner for marijuana. Like, I'm not a fan myself, but I don't judge people for using it. I really think, if anything, it is just kind of a drug that makes you less interesting. I've never met somebody that I prefer to be around them when they're high versus when they're sober. Or if they're one of those people that is just perpetually high, I usually find them to be quite uninteresting. But again, you do you, just don't get behind the wheel of a car. The thing that really bothers me with this is them editing my boy J. Jonah Jameson, my favorite Spider-Man character, to seemingly try and remove instances of his temper as well as his trademark cigar. I mean, J. Jonah Jameson is amazing, and I love that Marvel has continued with him the way that they have. Right these days, he's more like an uber conservative, like kind of like, think like Glenn Beck or Alex Jones. Not maybe as bad as Alex Jones, but I think that's a great development for his character. He's always meant to be heavily antagonistic and very, like, he's a hate monger, but, you know, he's a less offensive hate monger, in my opinion. You know, he hates things he doesn't understand, and unfortunately he has control of a press media outlet to spread that message. It just reminds me too much of when they tried to tone him down in Spider-Man 3, and it was like, what the hell are you doing? But yeah, otherwise, I don't think we need the uncensored version of this one. It's just a crappy anti-drug comic that the government put together. And hey guys, while we're on the topic of morality and censorship, let me remind you that I still have many not safe for work HeroClix miniatures, as well as many other custom miniatures available for sale. Most recently, I've been adding pieces from some of the most recent sets of HeroClix into my not safe for work offerings. For instance, here we have the buff babe Red She-Hulk in the buff, so to speak. If you like pussy, you're gonna love this black cat. Hey, she's also from Spider-Man. If you're more of a fan of dirty magic tricks, our Scarlet Witch has you covered. If you like the color red but aren't into magic or buff babes, well, then the new Daredevil has what you're looking for. Or maybe you're more into buxom blondes, in which case, check out our new Gwen Stacy miniature. All these and more offerings, both safe for work and not safe for work, can be found on my eBay, Etsy, and Mercari. Links are in the description. As always, if you'd like to help monetarily but don't want to buy a mini, I do have a Patreon. There also is that link. And hey, if you just want to help out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out. Just like I did with the last Lost Media video, if we can get this 100 likes in its first 7 days, I will do an additional miniature giveaway. If it gets to 300 likes in its first 7 days, I will do 2 additional miniature giveaways. We're getting really close to 400 if we haven't reached it by now. At the time of recording, we're so close. So by the time this hits, we probably will be at 400. But again, extra miniature giveaways will happen if we can reach either 100 or 300 likes on this video within its first 7 days. Thank you for listening to my pitch. Let's get to that last piece of not safe for work media. And at number 5, we have Shop Erotic, a partially found adult toy program circa 2006 to 2010. Shop Erotic was a late-night adult toy home shopping show that aired on Oxygen from 2006 to 2010. The show would air its episodes on a weekly basis from 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. and would mostly feature 2 hosts that were formerly from Playboy TV, Miyoko Fujimori Rifkin and Andrea Lowell, throughout the rest of 2007 to 2010. It was officially launched on January 29th of 2006, and the heart-shaped logo and the name Shop Erotic were both trademarked. The same month, a website for the program was also launched. Former Playboy TV host Miyoko Fujimori Rifkin and radio host Tiffany Garnath were the first to be hired for the show, though Tiffany would later be replaced by fellow Playboy TV alumni to Miyoko, Andrea Lowell. The episodes that aired were an hour long, and they aired on their old Shop Erotic website in the live TV section. The show would document and promote some of the adult toy products that were featured on Shop Erotic's website, as an alternative to the Adam and Eve adult toy website. Well, one of those is still around, right? According to the owner of iTelevision, Mitchell Cohen, the show Shop Erotic aired to over 65 million viewers via Dish Network and DirecTV. Now, unfortunately, we really don't have any old episodes of this available, though there are some footage, apparently, of when the phone number for the show would be constantly prank called by viewers. Now, some people have uploaded high-quality stills, though not many, and no full episodes. Also, the website had a collection of clips from episodes from previous years, but unfortunately, they were not archived or in MOV files, so they are unavailable at the time. There have been a few clips that have been found, but mostly this show is unavailable. Also, unfortunately, and this may have led to why clips of the show are not readily available, apparently from 2008 until May of 2010, they were involved in a lawsuit that was regarding an unknown complaint that could have been related in regards to the content that they were airing. Later that year, Miyoko would stop hosting the show, and it would get rebranded with a new logo and continue the program with Andrea and a new main host before being canceled sometime in 2013. 3 years later, they would host a temporary show that was known as Play With Me TV, which only had 3 videos on Miyoko's YouTube channel. So, I don't know. There could definitely be something involved with that lawsuit that meant that they weren't really able to archive this show very well. But at the end of the day, it was just an early, a mid-early 2000s sex toy QVC. How entertaining could it honestly be? I'm sure there's people that would love to find this one, but ultimately it does not hold my interest much. I just think it's kind of funny what used to be on like Dish Network, DirecTV back in like the Wild West of digital cable eras. If you're looking for fun, erotically themed content, you know what? I think my minis are a much better investment of your time and money. And hey, that's going to be our show today, guys. I want to thank every last one of you for joining me on this one. To all of those of you who have been suggesting lost media topics for me, please know that I do read all of your comments, and I do have a Word document on my computer that has all of your suggestions listed. Again, I do have them all documented, so you don't need to post them multiple times. I have seen a few times where people will post their suggestions on multiple occasions. Please note they are in the Word file, the Word document, and I will get to them. I typically only do one viewer-requested piece per video, though. Today's was Pokemon Stars. I did not call that out. I apologize. But rest assured, I have logged all of your suggestions, and I will be looking into them. Again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I know I did the call out during the ad break saying let's get this to 100 or 300 likes in the first 7 days. You know what? Let's see if we can get this video also up to let's see if we can get 2,000 views on this one. Please share the video around. Get as many people as you can to watch it. It really does help with the algorithm, and the more exposure I get, the faster this channel can grow, and the more I can do to make the content you all want. Thank you for being so good to me. Be sure to be good to yourself and to others as well. And until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean, this is Chimera Miniatures, and I sincerely hope that you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye!